yes.
All right, that means we can dive into what we have today.
Yes.
Okay. So today we'll be getting started with Node.js. We'll be getting started with Node.js, which is the actual reason we are here. Okay, so what is Node.js? Like I said, primarily JavaScript was built to run on the browser, right? And then let me recap. Let me give us a recap. I said JavaScript was built to run on the browser with an engine, right? So when your JavaScript is running on Chrome, I think it's using, what's the name of this thing again? So give me a moment. All right, so if your JavaScript is running on Chrome, it is using V8 engine, right? And if it is running on Firefox, that's Mozilla, it is using, what's the name of this guy again? Anyways, if your JavaScript is running on Chrome, it is using the V8 engine. And then one of our legends did what? Okay, Spider Monkey. Thank you, Oladimeji. So on Firefox, on Mozilla, your engine is Spider Monkey. However, on Chrome, it is V8, right? So one of our programmers, one of our legends, did what? He embedded the V8 engine into a C++ program. This program will allow JavaScript code to be able to run outside a browser, which means you can run it on any other environment, any other environment. And the name of this program is called Node.js. So basically what Node.js does is that it allows you to run JavaScript anywhere. Just like we have it here. It allows you to run JavaScript anywhere. And what are we going to do? I'm going to create a new folder. I'm going to create a new project. Okay. So we have an empty folder here. And what I'm going to do is create a new file called server.js. This is basically a JavaScript file. I know we are familiar with that, but sorry, I forgot to mention. Though we did this in our I think in our onboarding process, but let's just let's go through it again. So if you want to download Node.js, you come to the website nodejs.org, click on download Node.js. I already downloaded it, so I'm going to open. I'm going to open, agree, continue, agree, install. Do I already have Node.js, but for the sake of this training? And then after installation, I can close. So how can I confirm that my Node.js is installed? I'll open my terminal. my terminal. I think on Windows it is PowerShell or CMD. So I'll say node V. All right, so this will give you the version of the node you have installed, and that shows you have successfully installed your Node.js. So now that I have a project, I can just come to this project and say, I think I can say console.log, welcome to server. Console.log, welcome to server. So what am I going to do? I can also open my Node.js terminal and say, come to terminal and say node, what's the file name? Server.js. So in my console, I have server.js. Note that we are not working with browser here. Why? Because we are outside the browser environment. With the help of Node.js, we're able to run Node.js outside the browser environment. So if you are logging to the console now, we'll be seeing it in our terminal and not in the browser's console. Why? Because this is a backend program, not a front-end program. If it's a front-end program, we'll be seeing it in the browser's console. Yeah, so anything we log in our console here, we're seeing it here. So this is a basic JavaScript file. You can do basically anything. Constance name is you can do basically anything in your JavaScript file. So I can come here again and say node server.js. So this node is the node command, and this server.js is the file we want to run. I hope I'm communicating. So if I come here again and say hello world.js, hello world.js, yes, and I'm saying, in my console.log hello world. Let's just say hello world. That means I can come to my terminal and say node hello world.js. And yes, we have our hello world in the console. Are we all connected? So that's about Node.js. It allows us to run our JavaScript code outside the browser's environment. Something I'll be introducing us to is the packages.json. Packages.json. And what does packages.json does? It is a file that gives us necessary details about. Gives us the necessary details. Sorry, give me a moment, please.
Your mic is muted.
Oh, sorry. I was talking about packages.json, right? Packages.json is a file in our Node.js project, or you mostly find it in the JavaScript project. What it does is that it gives the, let me say, the system or whoever is checking the project the details they need to know about that project. it stores the project name, the dependencies the project will depend on, the command, the license, the author's name, and so many other things. And how do we create a packages.json file? We're going to come to our terminal and say npm init. That is, this init means initialize. And then we want to say -y. So this -y is, I'll call it flag y. So what this means is that all the questions you want to be asking me, I want to be saying yes. Or let's just say init. And then it will ask me, what's the package name? I'll say Node.js. Let me just press enter to give us default version. Enter, give us default. Let's say first Node.js project. Entry point. We want to say our entry point should be service.js. Test command. Just ignore this. Git repository, ignore. Keyword, ignore. Author is Ayomide Michael. And then license is ISC, yes. Everything is okay, yes. And if you notice, in our project, we have the packages.json file. Inside this, we have a JSON file, basically a JSON file. And don't forget, I told you how a JSON file is very structured, just like a JavaScript object where you have the key and you have the value. And don't forget that the key is always in a parentheses, while the value maintains the actual data type. All right, so inside this JSON file, we have the name, that's the name of our project. We have the version, that's the version of our project. We have the description, first Node.js project. We have the main, yes, this is the server.js project. That's the entry point of our project. We have the script, that's the script you can run in this terminal. We have the test script, the test command rather. And when you use the test command, this is what will happen. Echo error, no something. So if I come here and say npm run, then the command test, I'll have, you can see no error, no test specified, and exit code. Now why? Because we didn't have any test for this project yet. And then if we want to start this file, we have to come here and say start. We have to create another command and then put what we have in the command. So let me remove this, and then we'll come back to that. I have author, which is my name, and the license, which is ISC. If you can remember, earlier during this class, we did Node server.js, which means run this file. Are you getting me? Which means run this file. Now imagine that this file now is in one folder that we don't know, or it is maybe main.js, or there are so many files here that we don't even know which one to start with. Then while building this project, you may want to come to your script and say start. So when you see the start command, you should run node server.js. So if I come here and say npm run start, I should have my Johnny which I have here. So this one is starting okay. So this is the command we run, and this is the actual command inside that command that we run. This is the actual command that this command is triggering. That's the actual command that the command will call. So let's come back to our the JS file. And so in programming, right, in backend development, front end, in programming generally, when you're working with a package, with a language, with a framework, you always want to visit the documentation, right? You always want to visit the documentation, because this documentation is what the people that built this framework has prepared for you so that you can understand. people that teach you, people that use this framework, didn't bring the knowledge from heaven. It is the person that built the framework that explains to them that this is how to use it. And how do I know? How can I know how to use Node.js? I can come to the docs. On the navigation here, you see the docs. And these are so many things we can do with the what's it called? With Node.js. But we won't be going too far here, too deep here rather. We won't be going too deep here now. I'll come to this usage and example. And what I want to do is to create a simple server for us. A simple server. And how can we create a server? Firstly, we have to require the HTTP module. The HTTP module. HTTP module. And what is a module? A module is like a how do I put it? A module is like a container or a particular part of a code that handles one thing, right? So we can say we have authentication module to handle users authentication, which includes login, logout, registration. We can say we have the wallet module, which handles the user's wallet. Either you want to credit a wallet, you want to debit a wallet. We can say we have a finance module and so on. So here we want to require, let me remove this. We want to require the HTTP module. And what does the HTTP module does? It helps us create a server in Node.js, right? It helps us create a server in Node.js. It helps us create a server in Node.js. And this on Node.js, the HTTP module is coming with it. So how do we create a server? We say constant server, which is a variable, is what? HTTP, let's create server. Create server. HTTP.create server. This server is going to receive a callback. This is how we declare a callback, right? And inside that callback, we have access to the requests and response. The request and the response. So inside this block, you can do anything you want to do within your server. So what are we doing? First of all, yes, what are we doing? We are saying we want the status code of our response. Status code of our response to be 200. Right? We want to set an header for our response. So when you are setting header, you do set header. And what are the headers you can set? Content type is one of it. And then the value will be text, plain text. So set header is expecting two values, which is the first one is the name, and the second one is the number, is a value. This value can be a number, it can be a string, it can be an array of string or a list of string. It can be an array of string. So when you see a data type and this guy in front of it, that means it is an array. So it can accept an array as well. So here we are setting the content type to be plain text. And then what are we doing again? We want to set the, all right, we want to end the response and say response.end, say hello world. Now that we have our server, what can we do? We want the server to listen to a particular port. So we can say server.listen to port 3000. 3000. So when you are done listening, you want to run this call back, which says console.log server is running at port 3000. So let's come back to our terminal and say, sorry, and see npm run start. So what we have here is that server is running at port 3000, which means it is now listening to anything we are doing at port 3000. So let me come to my browser and say localhost of 3000. You can see I have hello world here, which is what I added here. I have hello world. It is what I'm responding to this request with. At this point, does anyone have any question? Is anyone lost? Okay, Shay.
Sorry to draw you back. I missed that part of when you created that package.json. Yes, and and the modules, like when you were talking about modules, I did not really get that part too, about the modules.
All right. For packages.json, I was saying that the packages.json file is a configuration file. It is a configuration file used in Node.js to manage dependencies, scripts, and metadata. So what this file does is that you can use it to manage the dependencies your app depends on. You can use it to give metadata about your project, which is something like a name, the name of the project, the version, description, the author, and the license. So many other things you can add. Basically, the packages.json gives more details about your app.
Okay.
Inside this package.json, you can define your scripts, the terminal scripts, which we did in line 8 here, which we are telling our projects that when you receive a terminal command that says npm run the command here start, you should run this command instead. If you receive this that says test, you should do this instead. Do you understand that?
Yes, but I think you ran a command that something in terminal that brought that, have you?
Yes, when you want to do this, you say npm init. So you ask you some random questions. Let me take this up so you can see. This utility will walk you through creating a packages of JSON file. It only covers the most common item and tries to get set to defaults. I'm still coming back to that. So it is asking for package name. You can say JS. All right, so it would be URL friendly. You can say JS. The version is 1. Do we have a Git repository? No. Keywords, not yet. License is ISC. And here we have our basic packages.json file, which is this guy here. And then don't forget that earlier during this class, okay, is this okay? Yes. So earlier during this class, I used node server.js, which means Node.js should run this file. So I come here and press enter. It's running what we have in this file. So in case we have so many files here, I don't know which of it is my entry point. I just put it here at the beginning. So I can run a terminal command that's this node that says npm run start. npm run is like the keyword, and then the start here is the command which is specified, which you created. So if I press enter, it will do the same thing as this. And if you notice, I'm assigning this to start, the same command I run here. Do you understand that? Are we still connected? All right. So the other question he asked was about modules. I'm saying module is a particular bunch of code that handles just one thing. Just like you say, you want to say you have a module that handles authentication. You have a module that handles authentication, which is when you want a user to sign up or you want a user to log in. You have a module that handles what's it called? The finance aspect, which is you want to credit a user, debit a user, do some other things with the user. You have a module that handles the admin dashboard, right? You have a module that handles sending emails to the users. So these are segmented parts of your system. Do you understand that? So in our server.js, what we did was to require a module. What this require means is that import this module to our project, and after importing it, we are putting it in a variable. So this is a variable. Importing it to our project and putting it in a variable. So what are we doing with this variable? Creating another variable called our server, and then we are actually calling the create server method in the HTTP object. Are you getting me now? This object is expected to receive a callback. And inside this callback, you have access to the request and the response. And yes, so this request is the request that came in, and the response is the response you are sending out. Request is the request that came in, just request. Request and response. So the request is the request the user is sending, or the front end is sending to your backend, and the response object is what you are returning. Do you understand that? Are we still connected? So talking about our request and response, I will have to explain this to you better. So every time you make an API request, or anytime you make an API call, you are making a request to the server, right? You are making a request to the server, and the server is responding with a response. You are making a request to the backend server, and the server is responding with a response. Like I said, sorry for the break in transmission. Like I said, you are sending a request to the server, and the server is responding to you with a response. And we have a couple of request types that you can send. That you can send to a server. Yes, we have a couple of request types, which includes a post request. I'm coming. I'm trying to get an image to show us. I'm trying to get an image to show us. All right, can everyone see this? So you can make a GET request to a backend server, and what would this do? It will retrieve data or resource from a specified URL. So what you mostly do with this GET request is to get things from the server. You want to get a user, you want to get a list of users, you want to get anything you want to get. It's even if it is a file, you are sending a GET request. An example of a GET request was the request we were using to fetch what's it called, the products, a products list. The request we were using to fetch products in our last class. That's an example of a GET request. And then a post request, what this does is it submits data or creates a new resource on the server. It is used to send data to be processed by the server, and it is often used in creation of a new resource on the server. So when you need a post request is when you want to create a user, you are trying to register something, or you have an e-commerce system, you are trying to create a post. Like I said, this will send data to the backend to process. This time around, you are not trying to get something from the data. Instead, you are sending something to the server. So in this case, you'll be using a post request. And then for put request, this updates an existing resource with the new data. It replaces the entire resource or creates if it doesn't exist. So what this does is that, imagine you have a product and you want to change the name of the product, or you want to replace, let's say, replace the product with new properties or new attributes. It's replaced the entire resources. So it's replacing the name of the product, the image, the slug, and many other things. And if the product doesn't already exist, it will create it, right? For the delete request, what this does is that it deletes resources from your server, either a particular product, either a user, or an image, or a file, or anything. It deletes it from your server. A patch request, what this does is it updates existing resources with the provided data. Patch request does not create a new resource. Unlike the put request will create a new one if it doesn't exist. However, for patch, it is not creating a new one. It is updating what you already have. And then for head, it's retrieve only the headers of a response. So when you don't need the body, the content of that request, you can use a head requests. When you don't need the content of the response, rather, you can use the head request, which would only give you the headers. And then for options, it retrieves and it fetches the allowed method and other informations of specified resource. So if you are making an HTTP request, if you are making an options HTTP request, what it will do is to get you the available method, which is either get post. It will just give you the methods that the backend allows for this particular endpoint that you are trying to fetch. And then the trace method that goes back to receive request to the client. Okay, so just like this trace request is, it echoes back the request received from the client. So if you send the payload to this trace, it will give you back the payload that you are putting, allowing clients to respect the request and see any modification or addition made by intermediaries. So let's say you have one server, you have a server, or let's say Cloudflare or a DNS provider between your server and the client, and you want to see if the DNS provider is not exchanging or updating or doing modifications to your payload, you can use the trace method to return back what you are sending, and you can be sure that, okay, this is what I'm actually sending. And one other request method we have is the connect method. We won't be going into that as of now. Do we understand that? All right, so one thing I would also introduce us to is codes. If you notice somewhere here, I said the status code is 200. And why am I putting 200? I'll explain that to you. Again, I'll be showing us an image that represents what we are trying to do. We're trying to know. So yes, can everyone see this? Confirm if you can see it. All right. So, let me make an HTTP request for us to see. Wow. If I come to, let me come to example.com. This is an example domain. If I inspect this page, come to the network, or let me just say, yes, all. So this is my network tab down here. So if I refresh this page, you can see I have the status. This one is 304. I'll explain to us what 304 means. And then I have one CSS file here that is saying 200. So I'll explain to us what that means. So let me come back to my image. I have the 100, let me say 100 series status code. And this is not so far, it's not so common, but you can just glance through it. The 100 is continue, 101 is switching protocol. Let's say you're on SSL protocol and it's switching to TLS. It will give you 101 status code. 102 is processing. Your request is still processing. 103 is early int. There's some people want to know very early. I'm not so sure, but I still believe that's what this 100 series is for. Like I said, they are not so common. The most common one here is 200, 300, 400, and 500. So what does 200 response mean? When you see 200 on the status code of a request, that means that request is okay. It is successful. No error. Nothing got spoiled. No error in the whole process. The request went successfully. The response came in successfully. Nothing is breaking. And then when you see 201, it is telling you that mostly you see 201 when you send a post request that is trying to create something in the backend, in the server. So the server will it will respond back to you with a 201 status code on the response. which means your resource has been successfully created. Let's say you're trying to create a post or create a product. You're sending a post request to your server, and your server is responding with a 201 status code, which means it is successful. And then for 202, it means the request is accepted. Yeah, your data has been accepted and it is processing. It is not it is not successfully created yet. However, it is already accepted and it is processing. And then 203 is non-authoritative, 204 is no content. So the 204 is when your response doesn't have any content. You see 204, 205 is reset content, 206 is partial content, 207 is multi-status, and 208 is already reported. So this status code, as we are working with it, you'll be understanding it better. And then for the 300 series, that's when there's a redirection. If you are trying to visit www.example.com and it is redirect, oh sorry, if you are trying to visit, yes, if you are trying to visit www.example.com and it is redirecting you to example.com without www, that's a redirection, right? So the status code 301 moved permanent. Okay, 301 means moved permanently, and this means that when you let's say I'm coming. Coming. So when you have a 301 status code, which is moved permanently, it is telling your browser, that this page has been permanently moved to this page, right? And if you are seeing any request that is trying to visit the previous page, which is the old page, just redirect it back to the new page without having to ask the server. That's when you have a permanent redirection, the 301 status code. And then for 302 status code, I think 302 is meant to be temporary redirection. Temporary redirection, yes. So when you see a 302 status code, it means the page is redirecting to another page. However, it is not permanent, which means for every time the browser sees a request trying to visit the old page, it should still check the server or the DNS record if it should redirect. However, for this 301, it won't bother checking, it should just redirect straight. And then for 303, 304, 303 is C order, and 304 is not modified. So the 304 basically means the same content you got from the last request is the same content you are getting now. So which means the content is not modified. Again, we'll be working with this HTTP request so we can understand it better. I mean, this status code rather. All right. So the next series you are going to hear is the 400 series. The 400 series. So this is telling this when you see a request in any of these 400 series, it means something is not right, and you have to check it. Something is not right, and you have to check it. Most of the time, it is I'll come back to that. So when you see 400, it means something is wrong. When you see 500 also, it means something is wrong. But the something is wrong here is different from when something is wrong in 500. When something is wrong in 400 is different from when something is wrong in 500. So in 400, you have a bad request. This means maybe the user is trying to, the user is meant to put something somewhere and the user is not doing it. Mostly, it is a user error. If everything is fine in your end, it is basically the user's error. Most of the times, it is expecting an input, it is not saying it is expecting a data type, so it is expecting an input in a particular data type, it is saying another data type, that's 400. For 401, it is unauthorized, so which means you are either not logged in or you are logged in and you are not authorized to make this request. So let's say a customer is logged in and is trying to do something an admin is supposed to do. The backend can come back with a response of 401 status code. For 402, you have payments is required. Let's say the user is trying to access a feature that is premium. You can return a 402, which means a payment is required. The user is required to make a payment before trying to make this request. For 403, it means the request is forbidden. It's forbidden. You shouldn't be doing this. And for 404, it means not found. Let's say the route is not found. The resources is not found. Let's say you're trying to get a post and the backend cannot find that post. You see a 404. If you are trying to make a request to an endpoint and the endpoint is not defined in your route, in your backend route, you see 404. And then for 405, it means method not allowed. And I showed us the methods we have. So if you are trying to make a post request where a post request is not allowed, you get a 405 status code. And then 406 is not acceptable. 409 is conflict. 413 is payload too large. So when you are making an API request, there's a size limit to the data you can send on your payload. So if it is more than that file, then that size limit, you'll be getting a 413 status code. And then the last one we have on the 400 series is the 429 status code, which means you are making too many requests in a very short time. Most times, I think it is always limited to 60 requests per minute. So if you're making more than the request you are supposed to make, the maximum request you can make in a minute, you'll be getting 429 status code, which implies too many requests. You're sending too many requests. You need to calm down. Are we all still connected? All right, so for 500 status code, like I said, something is wrong here is different from when something is wrong on the 500 status code. When something is wrong on a 400 status code, you can still show the message you are getting from your backend. Because aside from your status code, you still get a message that will tell you what is wrong. You can show the message to the users, right? You can show the message of what is actually wrong to the user. However, if you are seeing a 500 error, this means that this requires a technical attention and you should not be showing the errors to the user. You should not be telling users what is wrong. Do we understand the difference there? So if you are seeing a 400, exactly, you can see client error and server error here. So when you see client error, it's mostly something the user should do from their end. And if you are seeing a server error, it is something the users are not supposed to see. So let's start from internal server error, which is 500. So when you see internal server error, it means something is wrong somewhere in the server. And the stack trace, we call it stack trace. The stack trace will provide more details of where the error is happening to the developer. And then for 501, it is not implemented. You have to implement something that's not implemented. And then 502 is bad gateway. Most bad gateway may be due to configuration issue or something. And 503 is service unavailable. So let's say the server is down or you're trying to use a service that is currently not available on your system. 504 is gateway timeout. You are trying to make another request from your backend and it is timing out, or something you are trying to use a resource and to get that resource is timing out. You'll be seeing 503 status code. 505 is HTTP version not supported. Let's say you are using an HTTP version that is depreciated or it is no longer supported. We're getting 500 status code. 506 variant also negotiates. 507 insufficient storage. This 507 happens when your server is let's say your server is a 1 gig server of storage and you're already exceeding your 1 gig, you'll be getting 507. 508 is loop detected, where you are not supposed to have a loop, maybe an infinite loop. You'll be getting 508 status code. 510 not extended, and 511 is network authentication required. Do we all understand that? All right.
Your mic is muted though.
Oh, wow. Thank you, Mr. Johnson. So I was saying that what I did here was to terminate what I had in terminal, and then on reloading this page, I'm not able to access the server anymore. But let me start it again, npm run start. And coming here again, we can see our hello world. So when working as a backend developer, you most likely be using application JSON as your content type, which means, so when you see content type, it means the type of the content the HTTP request is giving us. And it is always in the header. So there's header, there's content, there's header, there's the body. Just like we have in the HTML tags, we have the head, we have the body, and on an HTTP request or response, there's the header, there's the body. So the header is what gives the let's say you are making a request and you have some headers. It gives the backend more details on what the context of that request is. Firstly, you can have the I think content type as well is application JSON, telling the request that this content I'm sending is a JSON, telling the server rather that this content I'm sending is a JSON. Also, you can have like an authentication header to tell the browser, to tell the server rather, that this is the user making this request. Also, you may have something like the cache, the accept, and so many other things on the header. So what we did here is to set the header to content, the content type of the header, which means we are telling the browser that the content, the type of the content we are giving you is plain text, is a plain text. Trying to get a sample image to show us. I guess I'm ready to go. So basically, like I was saying, a content type is what the is telling the browser or the person handling the request or response that this is the type of content you are giving me. So if I inspect this our page, if I inspect this our page, come to network and load. If I click here and come to headers, these are the headers I have. You can see I have status code is 200 OK. I have the request method is get. Request URL is this here. And this is the response header. This is the header of the response we got. Connection is keep alive, keep the connection alive. Content length is 11. I think 11 characters here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So hello world has 11 characters. The content type is text plain, right? And then the date of the request, of the response rather, we have the date and time here, that's a timestamp, and then keep alive, you have this value here. Then we have the request header as well. We have the request header as well. So we have this accept is telling the browser that you are accepting this type of request. And then this catch control, you have maximum age is 0, which means don't catch the response. So many other things. Let's see something that will catch our attention there. You have the user agent trying to tell the server that this is the kind of operating system and application that is making these requests. We have the host, which is telling us that this request is coming from this host. So let's say www.google.com is trying to make a request to www.microsoft.com. Microsoft can know who is making that request with the host. And that's basically the headers. And the response we have the response we got here. Yes. What is that about the headers? What is that about the headers? So what we are going to do is to come here and say, don't forget we have the create server, and inside our server we have access to the request and response. What we want to do is to say, first of all, we want all our response to go as JSON. So we are going to say response.set header. Content type is what? Application JSON. So this is telling the response that we are sending a JSON data. And then we want to do something. We want to say if our request, which is the actual request that came in, then the URL, which means, you know what we are going to do? Let's just log our request to the console. So let's say console.log request. Abi. So we can have a better understanding of what is going on. Yeah, so let me come here and reload. That's our request. Okay, so what happened is that every time I make a change, I have to terminate this and restart the server so that my changes can be reflected. Yes, so I have my request in the console. It is an object actually, and you have all these attributes. You can see it is an object of incoming request. You know what we are going to do? We are going to copy this. I hope we can. So again, we are going to copy the requests. The last time. We're going to copy our requests and then create a new JSON file so we can be able to see it very well. So this is a JSON file. This is actually the requests. Sorry. This is a JSON file, not a YAML file. JSON. Okay. It is a JavaScript object, not a JSON. So let's just say constant request. So we can come here and say it's a JavaScript. Yes. All right. So getting some errors. But let me see it is. I have TypeScript here. Anyways, what we want to do here is to check. What we want to do here is to check some attributes of this guy. So this is events, we don't need it. Readable states, we don't need it as a now socket, we don't need all these guys. In server, we have the server attribute as well. Do we need it? I don't think so. Let's just calm down, calm down, calm down, calm down. We have the raw headers as well. Anything you want to do with the headers, you see it here. All right, and this is what we are looking for, the URL. You know what we are going to do? Not to bore us, let's see. We can just log the request.url. We can log the request.url. So again, let me just clear what I have here. Clear. And then let me run the server again. npm run start. We have what? Server is running on something, something. And then, okay. Let me terminate this and reload. Reload is not working. And the reason it's not working is because we are not giving it a response. So it is waiting for that response. So what we have to do is to say, at the end of the day, we want to say response.end. And again, don't forget we are sending a JSON, so we can say JSON.stringify, which means it is passing, it is converting an HTML object, sorry, a JavaScript object to JSON. So let me, what I'll do is to say constant JSON response is what? Or let's just create a response like JS response, which is a JavaScript object, is what message is hello world. You know what a just an object is now. You can remember we created an object. Can you all remember can everyone remember we created a JavaScript object? Can anyone hear me? Oh, good. All right, so here now we have a JavaScript object. And again, I want to convert it to JSON, so I can come here and say constant JSON response is what? JSON.stringify the JavaScript response, which is the JavaScript object we previously created. Previously created. So what we are going to do is to return the JSON response. Do we understand this? Do we understand this? Here, what we are doing is creating a JavaScript object, and here we are converting it to JSON. Why? Because I already told this response that we are giving it a JSON, so it should be prepared for a JSON. And here we are converting our JavaScript object to a JSON, then sending the JSON. Do we understand that? So what I'm doing here is to start my server again, and then come to this our guy here and reload. Now you can see I have JSON hello world. Again, if I come here, come to this place and come to my headers, you can see my, what's it called? My response content type should be here. Yes, response content type is application JSON. which is what we told the browser that we are giving it. And then if you check our response again, we have the JSON here. So what I want us to do, what brought us here is for it to log the request in the console. And not just the request, we want the method as well. So we're able to ascertain that the request can be accessed, the endpoint rather. The endpoint here is just a / here. So we've been able to ascertain that the / is getting logged to the console, which is the request.url. Also, we want to be able to know which type of request is coming. Is it a GET request or a POST request or something? You can say request.method. Again, I'll terminate what I have in the terminal and run start again. Come here and reload. If I come here, you can see these are GET requests, which means the requests that are coming in are GET requests. Are we all still connected? All right, so what I want us to do now is to create a response for different routes. So what we have here is the index route. I want us to say hello. And when I say hello, we should be able to get a response. When I say come, we should be able to get a response. When I say product, we should be able to get another set of response. Are we getting that? So here we'll be using, let's use if statements for now. Let's use if statement for now. So I can say if request type request.url, is this our base URL? If you can remember, we did this. And the request method is a GET request. Can we remember this? I want to say response.status code is 200. And I want to say my JSON response. You know what we are going to do? Let's create a JSON response here. Let's bring this to the top. And then we are going to, let's just create an empty response here. Yes. So here now, what we are going to do is to say JSON response of message is hello world. And yes. So if I come back here, I'll have to terminate this, clear my console and run npm run start again. We have empty JSON response. Why? So let's do it this way. Let's do it this way. We're ending the request here. And then inside this place, we can say JSON.stringify. Why? Because we are sending a JSON. And inside this JSON.stringify, we are putting our JavaScript object, which is a message that says index page. And I can remove. All right. So now that I have this, I can also remove this. So what we are doing here is to say if the request is this part that doesn't have anything, and the request method is get, you should give us this response. The status code is 200, which means everything is okay. Okay. And then we are sending a response, a JSON response of this JavaScript object. So let me terminate this again and come out and come to our terminal. We start our server and come back here. Something doesn't seem right. Doesn't feel right. Again, let's log this to the console. All right, so we're actually visiting the products route. So let me remove this, and yes, we have our index page. And you see what happened there. We were visiting the product route, which we didn't have a declaration for, and we were not getting the results we expected. So again, what we did here is to check if the URL is this base URL, this base part, and then the method is a get method. If it is that case, we are setting our status code is to 200 and the response to be this. All right, another route you want to add is else. If you know how we write if else statements, right? Else, if request is about, you can see my one of my extensions is already suggesting this to me. So if the request is about /about and the method is get as well, what do we want to do? Again, we want our response code to be 200, and we are putting about page in the name of this. So let me come back here again. I should come back and say about. All right, I'll have to terminate my terminal again, my server again, and restart. So we have our about page. At this point, does anyone have any questions? Is anyone lost? Is anyone confused? Are we all on the same page? All right, so if you notice now, when I make any change, I'll have to terminate my server and restart. I'll have to terminate my server and restart. And I don't want to be going through all these project and processes every time I make a change in my project. So what am I going to do? There's a package that does that for us. So when it notices a change in our project, it will start the server. And the name of the package is node-mod, if I'm correct. Node-mod, so npm.js.com. npm.js is a node package manager. npm is a node package manager, right? And npm.js, this website is where you can see JavaScript packages that you can use on your project. Are you getting it? And this time around, I want to use node-mod, if I'm correct. Node-mod. Yes, node-mod. So node-mod is a tool that helps you develop Node.js based on automatic restarting. Okay, node-mod is a tool that helps you develop Node.js based on okay. Node-mod is a tool that helps develop Node.js based applications by automatically restarting the Node.js application when files change, when file changes in the directory. Let me just put it that way. And how do we install a Node.js package? We say npm install and the package, just like we have here, npm I node-mod. So this I means install. Is the short form. I can say npm install, and I can say npm I. All right. So we don't just want to install this guy in our project. We want to install it in our dev environment, which means we only need this package when we are developing. We don't need it in production. In production, you are not changing the files, and definitely you don't need this. You just want to start your server once. It should be receiving request and processing request. So how do we define that? We want this package to only install on the dev environment. We use the flag G, which is npm install, and we add the flag B, you add the package name. If I press enter, to install the package in our project. As you can see in the packages.json file, I now have the dev dependencies attribute, and it is telling our project that we depend on NodeMon 3.1.3. We depend on NodeMon 3.1.3, which means if you see any other version aside from this, if you see any other version, you can still. Okay, so let me explain this to you. This guy, I don't know the name, but this guy, here is telling this Node.js that if you want to install this package, you can install version 3 point something point something point something, but don't install version 2, don't install version 4. But however, when we primarily install this version, this node it is on version 3.1.9. And as you can see, it was published, this version was published 2 months ago. Right. And then after installing that, you notice we have another folder here, which is the node modules. And these are basically what we have here are the code that the developer of this package have written for the package. You have it inside this node module. And what you want to do is to avoid, of course, you don't want to push these node modules to your source control. Why? Because it is a very heavy file. It can be ranging up to, it can be going up to 1 gigabyte of file, and you don't want to be uploading 1 gigabyte of uploading and downloading 1 gig every day. Let's get in full. Okay, this is just 1.6 MB. So when we install more packages, you see that. And how do we make sure this is not added to our source control? We want to add a new file in our root directly and say git ignore. So if we are using GitHub, we are saying we want this GitHub to ignore node modules. We want GitHub to ignore node modules, if I'm correct, yes. It means it won't be pushed to GitHub, and anyone that wants to use this project would have to run npm install. And to install the dependencies and put it in the node modules. So what I want to do now is to delete these node modules and then say npm install. So let's assume we just clone this project and we don't have the node modules. You can just say npm install. It will install all the dependencies, and you can see added 30 packages. It has added 30 packages for us, other packages that this nodemon depends on. All right, so back to our nodemon. We want it to do what? Let me come to my terminal again. Don't forget, I said if you want to run a JavaScript file on Node.js, you want to say node, then the file, which is server.js, and this has created our server for us. But the issue with this is that every time we make a change in our file, we have to come back and terminate and restart the server. So instead of doing that, we can say nodemon, since we already installed it, server.js. All right, nodemon not found. Nodemon not found. Let's check the documentation again. So this is saying we should install nodemon globally. This flag means globally. So you don't have to put it in every project, and nodemon. So let's install it globally again. So when you install globally, you are installing it on your system and not on this project. So every project on your system can have access to it. So let's do that. And yes. So let's come here and say server.js. I hope this will work. Yes. So now that we have added nodemon to our system, we added it globally. When you install a Node.js package globally, you are installing it on your system. So since we have that already, we can remove the nodemon from our dependencies, from the project dependencies. And this is what we do. We say npm uninstall, just like we did when we wanted to install, I mean, npm uninstall node more. And you can see we move 30 packages, so, and so. Again, we want to come back and say node more server.js. So we are using node more 3.1.3. To restart at any time, enter rs. Can ignore that. Watching parts start at 7. So this means it is watching all the files, watching extension, it is watching JS file, and MJS, CJS, and JSON, right? And it is running node server.js, which is what I think what we have in our entry points. So let me change this entry point to hello world. I hope that's, you can see it's already starting, but it's actually calling this this start command. So every time we make a change in our project, the server is going to restart. So again, we are coming back to, I hope everyone can see my screen. We are coming back here. We have the about route. We have the about route. Let's create one more route and say, let's say book. Or let's say books. Also, this is a get route. So this is trying to fetch books. And we can now say we want to have an array, which is books. And inside the array, we want the title or the, yes, the name of the book to be the Lord of the Rings. Yeah, the author should be this. Thank you. We will have an ID for it. Right. What other thing can we have? All right, that's all. Then we want to have more than one book. You can see the way I'm saving the server is restarting. Let me come back again. I want to create another book. Suggest. Yeah, thank you. And again, I want to have another. Very good. So now we have an array of books. All we want to do is to come here and say books is our array of books. And I come here and say books. You can see now I have my books attributes, which is an array of book. In JavaScript, if your variable name is the same thing as your key, you can just remove it and say books. So that should still give us what we need. Yes. Now we don't have to terminate we don't have to stop our server and restart every time. We are still getting the result. Every time we save, it is being restarted. You can see as I'm pressing Ctrl S, it is being restarted. Are we still connected? All right. So one other thing we want to do is to add, we won't be doing much with this terminal as of now, so I can just bring it down here. We have the first route here, we have the second route here, third route, and then we can now say else. So if the route the person is trying to access is not in our, if we didn't define that route here, we can say the status code should be 404. And don't forget, I said 404 means not found. So which means the request is not found. So if I come back here and say 404, I can see my response is route not found. Again, response.end, just like we've been using JSON.5, converts object to JSON and we put the attract object, which has this message of route not found. So anytime I come here trying to access a route that doesn't exist, I have route not found. Users, I have route not found. Login, I have route not found. Sign up, route not found. And any other thing, something random, route not found. Do we understand? Do we all understand that? Is anyone lost? Does anyone have any question? All right, let's do one more thing. One more thing. So during our onboarding, I talked about Postman, which is what you can use to test your endpoints, to test your APIs. Postman. This is what you can use to test your. Do this. All right. It is what, like I said, it is what you can use to test your API collections, API endpoints, and to download it. Once you type Postman, you see the download Postman here. All right. So if you are using MacBook, you can download for the Intel chip or Apple chips. So those Apple chips are for those using M1, M2, M3, and M4. And then if you are using Windows, you can. Okay, I guess because I'm using a MacBook, I'm not saying for Windows. And if you want to use it on the web, you don't want to download it on your system, you can launch Postman on the browser, Postman on web. So I already have it here, Postman. What I'm going to do is to create a new collection. I'm going to name my collection, let's say, JS intro. Yes, and here we are creating a request. You can see first request. Yes, and what endpoint are we trying to make the request to? I come here and copy this page and say books. Yes, so I can rename this to get books, and save. I send. I have 404. This is meant to be books, not book. Send. We have our books. So here we have the request, anything you want to do with the request, and here you have the response. Here you can select the method. That's the request method. It's either a get request, a post request, put, patch, delete, add, and options. Yes. Also, for the params, we're talking about params later. You can add your query params. Let's say I want to say author. The author ID is 2, which is I want to get books for this particular author. We'll be coming back to that. And then we talked about header. So these are the headers. You can see Postman token, Postman will automatically assign it. The host, the user agent is runtime, something, something, something. So this is Postman user agent. Accept, which means it should accept anything, paper live. So this one. Accept means it should accept anything, if I'm correct. Accept encoding, connection. And then for the body, which means the body you'll be sending to the request. When you're making a post request, you need body when you're making post, put, patch. Yes, post, put, patch. These 3 requests, you need the body. And you can either send it as a form data, URL encoded, a raw JSON, binary or GraphQL, using raw JSON here. And also, for scripts, for tests, for settings, you can, as of now, we can ignore these guys. All right, so this is the HTTP protocol we want to use. We can ignore these guys and just focus on, though we'll still be coming back to them. We can focus on body, headers, authorization, and param, this first 4. And here we have the response, which is the body. The body is got from the server, cookies, don't have any cookie, the headers. These are the headers we got. Test results. That's if we have test here. Also, here we have the what's it called? The status code, which means this request is successful. This 4 milliseconds means this request to 4 milliseconds. And when I say 4 milliseconds, we have 1000 milliseconds in 1 second. So 4 milliseconds is a very fast time. And then this is 349 bytes. That's the bandwidth we used. So the response size is 349 bytes, and the request size is 206 bytes. So yeah, we have our books here, which is now we've created our first Postman collection and a Postman request, which is to get books. So let me save this. And sorry, please give me a moment, please.
Hi guys, just confirm you can hear me. So welcome back. Are you on the call?
Yes, I'm back.
Welcome back.
All right, so what we have here is a GET request, and what we've been working with here is a GET request. So we want to do what? We want to create a post request. We want to create a post request. And how do we do that? Since we have if else here, we can say so what we are going to do is this. These books, let me bring it somewhere here where it is accessible throughout our application. So unless we restart the server, the books are going to remain constant like this. And then, yes, we still have everything working. We still have our books, right? What I want to do here is to use a switch statement. Switch statement, right? I want to check if our request, So if our request is get, if you can remember we did switch statements the other day. If our request is get, we are returning the books we have, right? And if it is, all right, if it is a post request, before I go there, let's check again if it is working. If it is a post request, we still have our book. Now this is 48 milliseconds, 7 milliseconds. All right, so we still have our books. What if it is a post request? So we can say case post. If our request method is post, status code should be 201. Yes, it should be 201. And we want to say, we want to say book created, which means our book has been successfully created. So how do we send a post request here? What I want to do is to come here, add request, and we are going to call our request create book, right? You want to come here and say what? Copy our URL. It is the same URL actually, but with a different request type, a request method rather. If you check here, we have, let me remove this. So if our request is books, if our URL is books, that's our endpoint. Let me call it endpoint. If our endpoint is books, we should run this switch method, which we check for the request method, right? If it is get, we are assigning the 200 status code and returning our JSON. If it is post, we are doing this as well. So let me just come here. And yes, this is a post request, which is book created. And as you can see, we have 201, which means created. Though we are not creating any book as of now, but that is that. All right, so let's create a book. Let's say content book is what? Or let's just even say yes. Let's say the last ID is theory, so we can say ID is 4. The name is fellowship, the fellowship of the ring, and the author is DR something something. Let's check if we don't have this here. We have this here, we have this here, we have this here. But the name of the book is different. And what do we do here? We want to say, all right, so we are returning this message. We are also saying the book we created, book is book. So it is going to have, we are going to return the book we created as well. So let me come here, send the request. Now we have the book we created. We have message is book created, and we have the actual book that was created. Also, what I want to do here is to add this book to this list of books that I have here. And how can I do that? I can say book dot, I think, yes, I can say book, sorry, books. This is books, which is my books array. And I'm saying book here, which means I'm adding this to books. And I'm not sure. All right, let's just use the, I think, push, yes, to add another book. So we're adding another book to this books list. So after creating our book, you know what we are going to do. The moment I saved this file, the server has restarted, which means we still have these 3 books. So let's come to our postman, get books. We have 3 books. So let me come here and create a book. Book is successfully created. Let me come back here and try getting our books. All right, we still have 3 books. Let's check what's happening. Let's bring these books outside. Let's bring it outside somewhere here. So again, we want to get our books. Add book to the books. Get the books again. Now we have another book added. So what I did was to bring the books to my array of books outside, to bring it outside the server. So I'm not creating a book at the bottom after creating the server. I'm creating the books before creating the server. So of course we have the books in our database. We are assuming that we have this in our database. All right. So what we are doing here is to just send the books to the users. And what we are doing here is to push, which is to add another book to the array of books, and then sending the actual book we created to the users, to the user rather. So anybody making this API request. We all understand what we just did this evening. All right. So if you can remember, here I said, is it here? Here I said method not allowed, which is 405. So for this book's endpoint, we have the get method and we have the post method. This is a post method. Let me see. Yeah. Post and get. All right. So what if we are trying to make a request to a method that is not allowed? This thing keeps loading and it keeps loading and it keeps loading. So all we are going to do is to say the default, which is it is not a get request, it is not a post request. What should happen? Put it in default. We are going to say response, the status code is 405, method not allowed. And we are going to return a JSON response that says method not allowed. So I come back to my postman and send a put request again. You can see I have 405 method not allowed, which is telling me that this put method that I'm putting is not allowed. Like I should put the ones that I think they are allowed, which is post and get. Do we all understand that? All right, so that brings me to the end of today's class. This is 9 already. Does anyone have any question? Is anyone lost? Does anyone want me to recap on any aspects we mentioned today? Now, this our server file is getting so cumbersome. We'll be touching it in our next class. All right, Adibowale.
Thank you for today's lecture. So my only question is that, is there a standard to the formation of the response from a backend server? Is there a general acceptable standard as far as backend is concerned in terms of communication, JSON, and the likes of it? Is there a standard or maybe a document that guides it that is generally acceptable in the WW world or in the internet? So that's my question.
Yes, there's a standard. There is a standard. I'll be sending us. Yes, I'll be sending us what the standard is like. What a standard JSON structure is like. I will be working with it moving forward. Do you understand? Moving forward, we'll be working with it. And also for the endpoints as well. Just like we have books. If you notice now, we have the same endpoints to get books and to create book. That's the standard. And that is what we'll be working with. All right. Does anyone else have any question? Is Daniel on this call? I've not seen him today. Oh, he's still here. Okay. And okay. All right. Mr. Johnson, over to you.